one of them is saying like we're the cheapest option. One of us is saying like we're the best in the industry. And the third one was saying, I want to help you realize your goal of helping salespeople.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Sales Stories in Real Life, episode 35. I'm your host, Alex Bruski, and this is the show where professional salespeople share their stories of memorable buying experiences when the script was flipped and they were on the other side of the coin. Today, we've got a very special guest. He is the co-founder and CEO of Callypso. He is publishing his first book this September called Crafting the Sale. Welcome to the show, Michael Tuso. Speaking of books, it sounds like you had a really interesting buying experience when you were choosing a publisher for your upcoming book. Why don't you tell us about that, Michael?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. It definitely was a really interesting buying experience, that's for sure. And it was a major reason why I ended up moving forward with the publisher that we ended up choosing. So after I left my last job, Chili Piper, I was their director of revenue performance, a fancy way of just saying I helped the co-founders build out the sales team in the earliest days of the company, scaled it through Series B, which is a really fun and an exciting experience. And then after leaving the company, I had a mentor that reached out that sort of said, "Hey, have you ever thought about like writing a book?" Andy Paul was he's known for his enablement podcast. He also wrote several books, but one of them, Sell Without Selling Out. He was a tremendous mentor to me. So we were doing this these monthly sessions where basically like I think it was like a small group, like 6 people were meeting up, and we were kind of like doing homework and sharing ideas with one another. And then one day he brought in a hybrid publisher. I can talk about more what that means in a second. But he brings in a hybrid publisher, and me being the salesperson I reached out to the hybrid publisher after the meeting, like, "Hey, would you want to meet?" And she has books in her portfolio that I knew did really well because I had read them and sold over 1 million copies. The statistics around books are pretty crazy. There's you hear all sorts of different statistics from different people, but the numbers are way lower in terms of success rate than you would ever imagine. There's it's something crazy, like 90% of books never sell more than 10 copies. And then 9% never sell more than 500 copies. The statistics are I might be not getting them quite right, but they're crazy. The number of books that do really well are infinitesimal. Like it's just so small. So I admired this publisher because I'm like, wow, you have 2 books on the top 10 when I pull up my Audible, not just like one, and you're a hybrid. You're not this big Penguin Random House or something. You're doing something right. So I reached out to this publisher. And then long story short, I was prospecting for other publishers, basically. I started my career as a sales development rep, a full-time prospector, so I was used to that. And then I narrowed it down to basically 3. I could have gotten referrals to more. And with publishing, you basically have I'll simplify it, but you basically have 3 options. You can self-publish, you can use a hybrid publisher, which is they act as like a project manager for you. And then they also have the capability for placing your books in bookstores. And then you have if you're famous, you can go get a deal with Penguin Random House or HarperCollins or one of the big ones. You don't necessarily have to be famous, but you do have to have a solid idea, be well known in your craft, etc. So I knew that I wanted to do the hybrid route. And so those were the types of publishers I was talking to. And everyone was trying to hard close me. It was not really listening to what I was saying. maybe exorbitant fees, didn't really like uncover like what would make me like move forward. And I had this sales rep she was a VP, but she acted as my sales rep um, at Girl Friday, which is who I ended up like moving forward with. And she wrote me this like really kind email that was basically said, you know, I know your book is about sales and like I, don't really want to like sell you, but and she kind of said like I just really appreciate the approach you're taking with your book. And so she tied everything back to like my why, which is like I wanted to write a book that was really helpful to new salespeople because when I was a sales rep, I felt like the books were honestly like very boring and like not engaging to someone like right out of college. It made me be like, oh, this is why everyone says like they don't want to do sales. Like the books are so boring and like they don't speak to someone right out of college, maybe anyone, but that was my perspective was right out of college. And so that's something I always wanted to do. And so she tied it back to that, why I was writing a book to begin with, whereas like everyone else was talking about like how like great they are. And I was like, I have to move forward with her. We actually like printed out all the proposals and we had like a family meeting about it. And it was a universal vote for Girl Friday. And it was absolutely the sales experience, hands down, that caused us to move forward with them.
That's amazing. I mean, let me first off and start by saying the fact that you were trying to get a sales book published and people were selling you horribly. The irony is not lost on me whatsoever. And I could just see through your shoes how frustrating that must be. It's like, oh, hey, I'm looking to publish this book because of XYZ. Well, you should go with us because blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. It's like, okay, you're not even listening to me. You don't even know what's going on. Like, do you even know what my book is about? Right. Like, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
salesperson, like, read the room. So, I mean, I guess kind of like talk us through like when you're going through that experience. Like, was the publisher that you ended up choosing one of the first ones that you had spoken with? Did you have a couple of those
Mm-hmm.
hard closes first? Or I guess what was the kind of order of operations of how it happened?
So the original publisher who presented in that group meeting couldn't take my book because it competed with. I'm now talking to them about a second book, but for the first book they couldn't take it because it competed with something in their portfolio, and they have really high like standards for ethics and things like that. So but she was still like meeting with me and making sure that like my experience was good because she referred this other company. So this like goes back to like referrals being like so important and can often be like lost. um but also like prospecting is important too, because like if I didn't have this referral, would I have eventually found, the publisher right for me? Yes, maybe it would have taken a little bit longer. So you still have to do both of those things, me saying that as a seller myself. But that intro to from one publisher to Girl Friday was really, really helpful. And I think that helped with the quality factor too, because I sort of had this filter for someone in the industry. And the experience was really great as a customer of Girl Friday. You have this project manager that works with you. They even assigned me like this kind of like a book coach, which they don't do for everyone, but like because I was a first time author, like it's basically like a, almost like a personal fitness coach. They're pulling the words literally out of you and making sure you write them down. Especially I was like starting Calypso and like thinking through that. I hadn't started like Calypso quite yet when I started all this process or like closed around to funding or any of that yet, but I was like really thinking through like that component. And so I did make both work without being sacrificial to one or another. I would do my writing at nights and weekends. Like I wouldn't write during the day when I was trying to take meetings and things like that, which was really hard, but it's a really short, finite amount of time. So it's really tough. Like date night had to get moved, and friend night had to get moved, and that caused a little bit of angst, and it definitely was very tiring process. Like you're worn out at the end of it. But if you really focus your time in a short time span, you can write a book in 2 months. I mean, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people take years to do it. I know somebody who's about to publish a book that's he's been writing for 10 years, and there's certainly some mega hits that have done that, but you can write a book in 2 months. So yeah, it was a really crazy learning experience. And honestly, it sounds crazy to say, but having gone all through that, and I'm like, okay, now I kind of like know how the whole process works. Let's do that again. It's kind of where I'm at now.
Well, they played the long game with you too, right? Like it wasn't,
Mhm.
hey, let's get this one book, right? Let's get this one deal, like let's go all out to do whatever we have to do to get this one book. Like they were thinking of Michael the human, right? Like not even Michael the author. Like it was like, hey, let's make him comfortable, right? He's a first
Mhm.
time writer. Let's give him a writing coach, right? Let's kind of have someone there. I mean, and they didn't have to do that, right? Like that is obviously like extra time, extra money, extra resources on their side of the equation. But all of those little things, I imagine you'll go right back to them now when you're ready for your
Mhm.
second book. And so, like when you're going through that process and you're, saying, "Hey, here, like here's what I'm looking for." It's not maybe directly relatable, but it's kind of relatable to tech sales in a sense, right? Where
Mhm.
like you don't care necessarily about like, hey, like here's our stats, like here's the books we have. Like obviously that's important, but like it's more so like what does that do for me, the person, right? Like don't sell the feature, sell the impact. What would you kind
Mhm.
of speak on to that? Obviously, you've headed sales at Chili Piper, and you've kind of been through that before. You're co-founding Callypso now. What kind of experiences have you had with that, as far as like selling the impact, not the actual feature or not the actual publisher itself? Let's just say.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, you made a comment on the long game. The publisher I went with is playing the long game through many different ways. But the publisher that referred also is playing the long game because they would, if there's a good book, they would want to know about it too. So you have two publishers now kind of vying for attention in a very positive way. I think there was many lessons there that like SaaS can or tech sales in general can learn from. Because what I'm doing now is I'm going back to the original referrer for my second book because they made the referral. And oh, by the way, they met with me and gave me tips throughout. So both of them are playing the long game. And I think there's lots of lessons to unpack there. I think like and I do talk about this in the book too, where sellers need to understand like, yes, you have to understand your position in the market. You have to understand your landscape. All of those things are really critical. But ultimately, if you don't understand what will make the person on the other side of the call move forward, like you can't shoot in the dark. You have to know where they're coming from. We're governed by our experiences, and we view our experiences as like paramount in the face of data, in the face of someone else having their own separate experience. And so you really have to understand where a person is coming from and like what would compel them to move forward. And so we talk about discovery as a step in the sales process, but really it is the sales process. If you can't ever stop learning about your prospects and your customers even. And so the discovery piece is really important, but in the context of discovery, you have to figure out what is their why. What is that thing that will propel them to take action? That's like one of the biggest things we even see like right now. If someone were to buy a tech tool, there's like lots of different types of risk involved, right? There's change management risk. There's reputation risk, there's product risk. So if all of these things are risk and you're saying, oh, well, we have this feature, we have this feature, you're not aligned with how they're trying to purchase the product. Oh, by the way, your product seems the same as everybody else's, I'm not really seeing how it's going to help me solve a problem. The risk has to be mitigated. They have to understand ultimately what is that thing that you can uncover that will propel someone to take action. What is like that motivating to them? And unless they're going to do the work behind it, it's almost like anything else is like a moot point. They have to be willing to grab it and move forward and drive that change within their organization.
That's such a good example because there are so many tools out there where you can make a business case, you can make an ROI case, but why does that matter to that person specifically, right? Like I'll make up a kind of ridiculous example. Like you could have a tool that saves, you could do something in 20% less time. Well, what sounds more attractive? Like, hey, we could save you 20% of your time that you're normally doing X, or hey, we can save you time doing X so that you could take your child to school, right? Like you're tying it to that deeper why. I really, really love that you kind of pulled on that thread a little bit. How did the publisher hit that with you? Because obviously they're in it with you for the long haul, as you mentioned. Both of them are in it with you for the long haul. How did they kind of connect the publishing of your book back to your ultimate why and seal the deal?
Yeah, so from a buying experience, once I nailed it down, narrowed it down to three, one of them is saying like we're the cheapest option. One of us is saying like we're the best in the industry, and the third one was saying, I want to help you realize your goal of helping salespeople, and it was just like a no-brainer at that point. Plus, it was like I printed out literally for you know people in the family, and we sat down literally at the dinner table and everyone had the same vote, and we debated it. It was like a fun little exercise, like this is once in a lifetime thing. Like I'm never going to be a first time author again. This is the only time. So I said let's have fun with it, and I printed out sheets and we talked about it, and it was unanimous. Actually, I did the same exercise with when we closed our round of funding. And we kind of was like, hey, we have different options. Like it moved a lot faster. Our lead VC had a lot of really good relationships, and then once I had that, the other ones it was like falling in place, and so we were coming to a position where we had options. And I did the same thing. I was like, let's think this through. I said that time I did it with my co-founder and family and friends and things like that too, and that was also unanimous. So these like compelling sales experience that is then a buying experience for someone else really does make a huge impact on somebody's ability to work with you.
I love that. You've got three publishers pitching you, one of them saying, hey, Michael, we're the cheapest. One of them saying, oh, we're the best in the industry. We've won this, and this award. And the other one's talking about, hey, we want to help you become a first time author and we want to help build you up. That's a prime example. And kind of going down that route anyway, how can we've got some B2B sellers that are listening to the show right now. Mm-hmm. How can the B2B sellers listening deliver that same experiences to their buyers, right? How can they kind of like remove that sort of jargony stuff or the kind of me focused selling points and connect their product or their service to that deeper why? What would be the biggest takeaway that you'd give our B2B sellers listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to get like with our SDR team, well, really at every company I've worked at, but at Chili Piper most recently, if they got an objection over email, they would like send it to me. I would ask them to send it to me, and then I would also have them write what they wanted to say. And oftentimes, this is like so simple, but like oftentimes it's as simple as how you handle an objection of someone saying, oh, I can't because of X. And so often the SDR like just didn't address the heart of like what that person was caring about. And it wasn't just like, it was like top performers, bottom performers, it was across the board. And so often if we just like figure out what they're literally telling you what that thing is via objection, and you have to figure out what the heart of that concern is. And until you reframe that, and get them to, either see it a little bit differently or add perspective or assure them, in an SDR's case, you're not trying to sell the deal. You're trying to sell them a meeting to get on, a call to spend their valuable time with you. And so like literally just getting to the heart of what they care about and doing so quickly and really kind of holding that and showing that you understand that. It really is that simple. And so a lot of times we like to lead with ourselves, our product, et cetera, but really lead with what they, uncover what they care most about and lead with that and stay with that and drive that through the sales process. And sometimes that can change by persona. So that can complicate deals. So you have to understand, different personas in an organization. But that dynamic is paramount to salespeople.
That's huge. If someone is asking you a question, there's typically always a question beneath the question, right?
Yeah.
So like, don't listen to the question to respond to the question. Listen to the question to understand what they're actually asking or what they're actually looking for. Or like you said, what's at the heart of that. That is so perfectly said, and quite frankly, can't be talked about enough because, like you said, bottom performers, top performers, like it was across the board, like just kind of missing that main sort of element of, like you said earlier, what actually makes people move forward, right? Not what's going to show them an ROI, what's going to look good on a business case, what's going to actually make them move forward.
Exactly. Exactly. They have to be willing to like take, especially like if you're trying to motivate a champion, like they have to be willing to take this project on as their own. And that's the level of identification that they would need. That's the level of motivation that they need. With software products, it's behavior, right? Like you're not just like going through the store and picking up kombucha, it's behavior. They have to adopt it. They have to have meetings about it. They have to get people to use it. And whenever you talk about human behavior and changing that, it starts to get like very complex. So the degree of motivation that they would need is very high.
That's why most deals get lost to the status quo. Right there.
Exactly.
You just laid it out in plain language. That's awesome, Michael. This has been absolutely fantastic. This is the first time that we've ever had a guest talking about being sold by a publisher publishing their book. So you have like pioneered this sales stories in real life sector. So happy for you, and such a huge congratulations on the book coming up in September. I know I'll be tuning in. I know that you're working on a lot. You got a startup, you got a book coming out. So why don't you take a moment here before we jump and plug something with the audience, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, Calypso is a platform for account managers, and then crafting the sale is about, creating a fantastic sales and buying experience for for your buyer. So it's a, timely topic for us, especially as, you can build a product in days now. So, all things equal, how do you deliver these impeccable buying experiences? Not just for, experience's sake, but also to drive revenue and have a better career in sales.
Love it. Make sure you check out the book, Crafting the Sale, coming out in September. Connect with Michael on LinkedIn. Check out Callypso. Michael, this has been an absolute blast. Thanks so much again for your time today. I know that people are going to love this one.
Thank you.
See you next week. Still Stories in Real Life, fam. Cheers.